It's that time of year again. Hurricane season is in full effect. And now that we've got a little bit of a storm brewing up in the Gulf Coast, got a little bit of a public service announcement for you future homeowners.
Yeah, so if you're buying a home along the Gulf Coast, we are in hurricane season. And so it's important to know that you need to bind your home insurance and possibly your flood insurance by a certain time.
So once a named storm hits the Gulf, most insurance companies stop writing or binding new policies. So if you haven't secured your coverage yet, you'll either have to wait until the storm passes through or risk delays of closing.
Right. So sometimes, like right now we have Dexter that's brewing, that's expected to pass through Florida this week and then enter into the Gulf Coast. With that being said, some insurance companies are already anticipating this, so they may have already stopped binding. What that means is, let's say you are scheduled to buy a house on Friday of this week. You're going to close on Friday. If your lender has yet to bind your homeowner's insurance policy, it may already be too late. You may have to wait until after the storm passes, and then they assess any potential damage in the area where the home is located before they will even allow you to bind insurance again. So it could potentially delay your closing.
So another kind of way to look at that too, from the realtor's perspective or the buyer agent perspective, not necessarily a bad idea for that to get pushed back on an extension anyway. Have the risk move over to the seller in the event something like that happens. Obviously it's not your house yet, so why should it be your problem? Just my take. Now, if you've got rate locks and all that stuff into place, sometimes you got a little bit more, funds.
There are a lot of things to consider.
A little bit of moving parts, but that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So just some things to be able to think about.
Yeah, it still doesn't hurt to bind insurance. For example, I have one closing Friday, and we're all anticipating that area is going to be fine. So if and when the storm does pass, home is still good, they still close on time, and you don't have any delays. So it doesn't cost anything to bind insurance a little bit earlier than normal. So I always advise my clients, let's get the insurance bound ahead of the storm coming through before they shut down, even being able to bind insurance. And then that way, if the storm fizzles out, if the property's okay, you still close on time. You don't lose your contract, you don't lose your rate lock, you don't spend more money, you don't stress out, it won't hurt to at least try.
So speaking of binding insurance, same thing's going to apply for flood insurance. So if you're in zone A or AE, you're going to have that bound anyway. But if you're in zone X, this is one of those where it's voluntary and you don't necessarily need to have it, but you're going to want to make sure that it's bound prior to, because after you close, there's 30 days?
There's typically about a 30-day waiting period. So let's say you buy a house and close on it today, but you decide not to purchase flood insurance until tomorrow, then your flood insurance doesn't go into effect immediately. There's a waiting period, because what they don't want to happen is, oh, there's a storm brewing, let me get flood insurance, get the flood insurance, nothing happens, let me drop flood insurance. Repeat, repeat, repeat. That's very costly for the flood insurance companies. So if you want to buy flood insurance and you're buying a house, I highly advise you purchase that in advance of closing, at the very latest on the day of closing.
So basically being proactive, buying that flood insurance, helps avoid the risk, so to speak. So
right.
Few benefits of being able to get it done early. Obviously, you got peace of mind knowing that your investment's covered. And of course, for Tracey, it keeps the loan process moving on track.
It avoids last minute stress and costly delays, for all parties involved in the transaction. So it's always good to be proactive instead of reactive.
Amen to that. So if you got any more questions on flood insurance or anything buying house, Tracey, where can they find you?
Tracy.Lacer@HancockWhitney.com.
We'll see you next week.